thought I would do a short video on a bit of the process on how to make your own kombucha at home. So kombucha is a very easy DIY fermentation to make. And basically it's a sweet tea that's fermented using something called a SCOBY, which is kind of like a starter to do it with. If you were doing sourdough or something like that, it's the same kind of idea. You need a starter to start the fermentation in this case. And we're going to use the kombucha scobies to do that. So they're not very scary. They're actually okay. Some people are a bit, oh my gosh, what is that thing? But as you'll see, it's a pretty simple and straightforward procedure. So when I start the process, I make some tea. It's a really strong brew and it's very sweet, and you need to let it come back down to room temperature before you put it in your tanks with your scobies, because they don't like things that are really, really super hot. So adding boiling hot tea would be very bad for your starter. And so I make mine with some loose leaf black tea. So this one I have here is a ginger peach one that I got. And I just put them in a couple of brewing baskets so I can reuse them. And I add them to my big pot here. So I've got some tea that I brewed here and chilled it, or just let it come down to room temperature rather, so that it's ready for the tanks. So one thing about this mix is you want a black tea. You can use some mixes of green tea, though I've heard that they can sometimes be harmful to your SCOBY. But the SCOBY is kind of like a little junkie, I like to call it. So it really likes its caffeine and it really likes sugar, and that's what it's going to feed on and do the fermentation process to turn that sweet tea into a fizzy kombucha. So I have enough tanks that I can use this 6-liter pot. So I fill it up with water, and right now I'm letting the water just sit overnight without a lid on to let the chlorine evaporate. So I was using a reverse osmosis water, but most of those tanks to go and purchase those are turned off right now because of the corona. So I thought, well, I don't want to stop brewing kombucha, so how am I going to do this? So what I decided to do was try it out with tap water, which is usually discouraged in making kombucha because it can be harmful to your SCOBY and stop the process eventually after a few attempts at brewing. So I thought maybe that was because of the chlorine involved. So I'm leaving it overnight in the pot with the lid off, letting the chlorine evaporate, and then doing the tea the next day. So I've done this now probably since March 5 or 6 times, and it's worked out really well. In fact, the scobies and the tea are producing even faster than normal. So it seems to like the water, so that is okay. I haven't heard about distilled water, if that's okay or not. I've never used it. I've only ever used the reverse osmosis. So you may have to look up if distilled is okay. I somehow remember that distilled is not the best in this case, but I'm not too sure. But right now I've been using tap water that I'm letting sit overnight, and that's been working great. I fill that up, then I bring that to a boil, add my tea. So for the 6-liter pot, the recipe is, I think it's 12 teaspoons of tea, and 1 teaspoon goes in a tea bag. So if you're using tea bags of black tea, it'd be about 12 for this much kombucha, and or otherwise I use 4 tablespoons of the loose leaf tea, and I'm putting 2 in this one and 2 in that one. I pop that all in. When the water comes to a boil, and just before I put this in, I'm just adding some sugar to that. So I usually use just a regular Rogers white sugar. If you don't want to use white sugar, you can use a organic sugar or something like that, but definitely not a honey or maple syrup or anything like that. For your sweetener, you want to have a sugar or an organic cane sugar or something along those lines, because honey and maple syrup will not work as well for the fermentation process. So I was taught to make kombucha about 10 years ago by someone who was doing it all the time, did a lot of it, and he always used just the regular white sugar. So it's okay. Most of the sugars will be eaten up by the SCOBY anyway in the fermentation process. If you're someone who would prefer an organic cane sugar, go for it. I've used that and it works totally fine too. Let's set this aside here. So once you've got your tea brewed, and if you want to have any other recipes for smaller amounts, you can just ask or just do the math back down. So this was 6 liters. 4 tablespoons of loose leaf tea, or 12 teaspoons, or 12 bags of a black tea, and 2 cups of sugar is what I put in here. So then you need a starter. You need a SCOBY and starter liquid. And starter liquid is going to be the fermented tea from a prior batch. So when you're getting your SCOBY from someone, they should be giving it to you with some liquid to keep it also moist before it's being brewed again. And also as the starter liquid to start your new brew. So I have some kombucha tanks that I've already brewed here. And so I've got quite a bit of starter available to me before I do the bottling on these as well. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention was, how are you going to know when your kombucha is ready? So when it's ready, it's kind of a personal preference sort of thing. So if you like it a little more sweet or a little more fizzy, or you'd like it to ferment longer and be more tart or sour, more to the vinegar side of things, you just leave it in there longer. But I just take a long straw. I use this stainless steel straw here, and then I just gently move the SCOBY. This is my SCOBY on top here, by the way. They're looking very healthy. Just gently move it over, put the straw into the bottom, and just take a sip and try it. Fizzy. So this one is good. It's a little on the tart side, but it's ready to go. So that's what I do starting maybe, 3 to 7 days after you've started a tank or a jug of kombucha. You can taste it and see how far it is along. So I find in my home in the summertime, the brewing time is shorter, and in the winter it can be a little bit longer. Some people have very good success with it's always the same 10 days every time or 7 days every time, but I found mine to be very variable in that way. And one more thing about DIY, making your own kombucha, is it is a fairly simple process, and it can be very forgiving as well. So it's basically just making it to taste as you like it and trying out different things. So if you'd like to try, say, 1/3 black tea, 1/3 green tea, 1/3 white tea, and see how that turns out, that's totally fine. If you want to add a little more sugar at the beginning, that's great too. It's just different amounts. Will vary your brewing time and so on. But I wouldn't stray too far off the recipe, though. If you add in a little extra sugar, it's okay. If there's a little extra starter in the mix, it's okay. In fact, that's probably beneficial because that's going to start the brewing process a little bit faster. Now, so why do we want to have kombucha? Kombucha can be a source of probiotics and antioxidants, and as a fermented beverage, fermented beverages are very good for your gut health as well. So it's a good one to have around. And making your own is also going to mean it's not pasteurized, and that's going to preserve a lot of the things that are healthy about it for you. So those are some ways to make it, or some reasons to make your own. And it's very inexpensive to make at home. It's just water and tea and sugar, and then your SCOBY. So very, very inexpensive. I don't even know what it costs to make a liter, but I don't know, it's basically the cost of the tea. Sugar is quite inexpensive, and so it just depends on what tea you're getting. But I think about this volume of tea, 100 grams of tea cost me like, I don't know, $4 or something in bulk. So not expensive at all. You can experiment with the flavors. This one I have going right here is a ginger peach tea, so I think that's going to be nice. When I was taught by my friend Rob, the one thing he did say to stay away from was Earl Grey tea, because apparently bergamot can be harmful to the SCOBY. But again, sometimes anything goes. I've heard of people only brewing with green tea all the time, and it's always worked. When I've used green tea, it's killed it. So I'm not an expert, but I'll just give you a general overview, and do your own research and talk to other brewers as well. But if you're just starting out, this should be a recipe to get you off to success, how I'm doing it here. So let's go and bottle a couple of bottles and just show you the process of getting your tea liquid ready. So when you have your tank, my tanks are 2 liters in volume. I just have, these are former, like those cookie bowls, they would actually sit on this slant here on the counter, and that would be where you'd reach your hand in and get the cookie. So they've just been repurposed into kombucha containers. So you need 10% starter liquid to the volume of your tank. So since I have 2 liter tanks, I always use 200 milliliters per tank. So that's almost a cup per tank. I've got this tank here. It's also 200 or rather 2-liter tank, so I use 200 ml in there. This tank's a bit taller, but it's got the same nice wide opening at the top. What you want in your tank, if possible, is an opening that is the same size as the bottom of the tank, so it's flush all the way up and down. This one is not, though it has been working really well still. And just as an aside, while we're on that topic, you do not want to seal these with a lid because they do need air as part of the fermentation process as well. So I just use some old cotton sheets that have been cut up here, and I just wrap it on top with an elastic, and there it is. So that's to keep the fruit flies away and things like that, because sometimes they come around, right? They like that kind of thing too. Okay, I hope this is okay to follow here. So I've got my 6-liter tank, and I have, or my 6 liters of tea that I've made, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 2-liter tanks, and I'm gonna need 200 milliliters for each tank. So I'm gonna first reserve 800 milliliters, which is almost a liter. I'm not sure what almost a liter is in imperial, but about 3 to 4 cups. Now, if you throw in a little extra starter, that is totally okay, because it's just going to likely make your brewing process a little bit faster. So here we go. Here's my starter liquid. So again, that's that tea that's already fermented into kombucha, and it's now become the starter. It's going to kickstart what's going on here. So I just pour this in here, and then I give it a good mix just to have everything evenly blended there. So that's one thing that I've been doing differently the past year or so. I took a fermentation course online, and this was one of the suggestions. I was leaving the starter in the tank and the SCOBY and then pouring in the tea on top, but this has really made my results more even and faster doing it this way. So that's all mixed up there. Oh, another thing about your utensils when you're making kombucha tea, wooden utensils are good, and stainless steel. Silicone as well is okay. Just, I don't know. Again, it's things that you learn a long time ago and you don't really remember why. We just keep doing them because it was the best thing to do for the SCOBY, and everything's been successful. So why change it, right? Okay, so the tea is ready to go with the starter. Then I've got some for bottling the kombucha. Now, just to go back one step here, you can pour this off, pour it into a glass as is, drink it right out of the tank if you want. Or you can do something called a second ferment, and that's going to be in a bottle. This time it is going to be sealed, and if you like, you can add a little bit extra sugar or flavored sugar. I like to add some of our summer berry sometimes. In these bottles that I'm going to do today, I have some raisins that I'm going to add in there, and some crystallized ginger, which I thought would go really well with the ginger peach. And I'm going to add a bit of mango lassi for flavor too. So this mango lassi, it's like a flavoring for a yogurt drink. It tasted really good in the kombucha. So I was drinking a bottle from the last batch that I did, and I was like, there's a neat flavor in there. What is that? And I saw a little bit of the mix at the bottom, and I was like, oh, it's a mango lassi. I'm notorious for not marking my bottles, so it's like a mystery drink every time. But anyway, the mango lassi was really good. So whatever sweet you want to add in after, some raisins, the crystallized ginger, the mango lassi, they all have a bit of sugar in them. And what that's going to do is once it's bottled and capped, it is going to ferment some more, because the kombucha in here is going to keep eating away at that sugar. It's going to get more bubbly and fizzy, and then you're going to have a nice carbonated flavored drink. You can add some fresh fruit in there too. Strawberries are really nice. Saskatoons are really nice in summer. So just be aware that the fruits can cause more carbonation and pressure inside the bottle, and that can be a little bit explosive sometimes. So you always want to open your bottle away from your face just in case. So, and I have had a couple of bottles with Saskatoons in them that exploded on me, so I don't do that too often anymore. But the raisins, crystallized ginger, some of the dip mixes, the sweet ones have worked really well. Nicely carbonated and flavored, but not too explosive, because You want this stuff ending up in your glass, not going down the sink, right? So yeah, but try different things, see what you like, because definitely something like strawberry and kombucha, oh, it's so good. You want to try that out. So I have a silicone funnel that I use that's got a nice small end on there, so it fits into the bottle here. And this is where, for me anyway, it can get a little bit spilly. Oh, you know what? I'm going to put my raisins in first in this one. Yeah, just cause. So hopefully you'll have better luck than me. But what I do is sometimes I even just measure it right out of the bottle. And I think that's why it's a bit spilly, just the angle of the tank. But so I do like to do it over a dish rack over the sink, just so I'm not making too much mess on the counter. I almost need 3 hands for this, but so in it goes. And so now that I've got my starter liquid all ready in the freshly brewed tea, I just take these down like right to the bottom. So I take all the liquid out that I can, and now all I've got left in there is the SCOBY. And then this one is almost full. I think I'll just leave that one for now. Normally I would fill them up probably to about here. You do want to leave a bit of room at the top so that there's some room for the air and carbonation. So just seal that there. Then I'll leave these on the counter a day or two, and then either put them in the fridge or another storage area just to sit. But just another day or two on the counter will kind of kickstart that second ferment at room temperature. Then I pop it into the fridge. And this one here I'm going to do with the crystallized ginger and some of that mango lassi. I think that's going to be an interesting flavor later. I do not have I need a measuring spoon. When I'm doing the powders, like the summer berry, mango lassi, or we have a baked apple dip mix that, oh, it's really good in kombucha, ooh la la. So do about a ½ teaspoon of it. Just send that into the bottle there. I'll grab my other tank here. When they're really full, I also like to have my silicone tongs handy. Keep those SCOBYs in there. So I'm just gonna pour this guy in here. So this one, yeah, it's gonna be the mango, it's Billy, mango lassi and the crystallized ginger. Now, if you're not comfortable pouring straight from the tank, you can also just pour the kombucha into a measuring cup. It's got the spout there, and that will make it a little bit easier too. All right, so this one I've got a little bit too full here. I'm just going to pour off just a tiny bit there. And then now it's got some room on top. Sometimes I'll give it a little, just a gentle inversion, just to get any of the spices out from the top there. So there it is. Nice pretty color already, hey? Okay, so that's going to sit there. Just by the way, oh, they're still almost the same color. This one's gotten really bright from that yellow in the mango lassi. Okay, so now this is ready to be filled up with the new tea for the next batch. Now, these SCOBYs, they keep making more of themselves. So there's called having like a mother and having its babies. And then what do you do when you get a ton of these SCOBYs? Well, you can give them away. Hopefully somebody will want to make kombucha alongside you, so you can give them some starter and one of these SCOBY pieces. There's lots of articles online about things to do with them. So some of the things I've heard are dehydrating them into like a rawhide type of treat for your dogs. That's an interesting choice. I've heard of them going straight into the compost. I've heard of them even used as a facial mask. So hey, whatever floats your boat, try it out. I haven't tried the facial mask yet, although I don't know, maybe I will. Not sure. Anyway, there they are there. I do have quite a few here, and I've got 2 tanks actually in the cupboard that are full of SCOBYs too. So I'm hoping some of my friends will want to make kombucha along with me. So yeah, let me know. I always got some SCOBYs around here. But one thing I have done with them is made them into SCOBY candy. And so that was basically creating a simple syrup, soaking the SCOBYs in them, cutting them up, putting them on the dehydrator until they're chewy, and making SCOBY candy with them is one of my favorite things. Well, actually the only thing I've ever done with the leftovers other than give them away or occasionally toss them out when I've had too many. But SCOBY candy is really nice. Oh, I got a video somewhere of my kids eating it and not knowing what it was. I should dig that up and find it for you. But anyway, that was a good one. So what was I going to say about that? Oh, and I like to add gingerbread spice or eggnog spice. Oh, they're really, really good. So there's some recipes online for different ways to make the SCOBY candy. That's been the easiest one that I've found, is doing the simple syrup, adding your flavoring, letting this soak for about 24 hours in the fridge, cutting up before or after, didn't seem to matter, and then putting it on the dehydrator and making the candy out of it. Okay, so this one, I'm just going to grab this. I'm not going to pour it right out of the pot because, yeah, I know my limits. And then now it's just a matter of adding the new tea to the tank. Now for this as well, the SCOBY, it's kind of alive, so you do want to leave a bit of space at the top for air and things like that, because these SCOBYs, they might pop up to the top, sometimes they float to the bottom. Not to worry about it too much. Wherever they tend to land is where they want to be. Just to, leave some room at the top, because sometimes as they're making a new SCOBY, it takes up more space and you don't want your liquid overflowing into your cupboard or wherever you're keeping them. So where to store your tanks when they're ready to go? You can store them on the counter. I keep mine in a dark cupboard, and there's a gap between the top of the tank and the shelf above, because you do want to have some space for airflow in there too. But somewhere dark and quiet, you keep them in the basement, or not too hot, not too cold, something like that. But definitely a fairly warm spot. And then about 7 to 10 days from now, I repeat the whole process again. So that's it. That's DIY kombucha making and bottling and enjoying. And yeah, I hope I've covered everything. It's been a simple process. I've been doing this, I think, since 2010 I was introduced. Might even be 2009, my goodness. So my thanks to Rob Cooper, who introduced me to the world of kombucha brewing. And I hope I've been able to share a few easy tips with you as well to know how to do your own DIY kombucha at home. Thanks for watching. See you next time.